Welcome to the CBIA BizCast powered by Google. On this podcast, we dive into stories about Connecticut businesses.
Downs Construction actually came to my school.
And business leaders.
I think it's always also really important to be able to see a path forward
for shaping the future of Connecticut's economy. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amanda Marlowe, and on this week's episode of the BizCast, we are joined with KeyBank market retail leader for Connecticut and Massachusetts, Elona Shape.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the BizCast. We're so excited to have you here. I do want to mention that you recently were honored with the Business Council of Westchester's 40 Under 40 Rising Star Award, and you're also a proud mom of two boys, is it?
Yeah. They're 12 and 14.
Okay, very fun ages.
Very active in sports. So yes,
yes.
For sure.
We'll kind of get into a little bit of kind of juggling that and, the success that you've had. But tell us a little bit first about, your career background, how you first got started with KeyBank.
Yeah, it's such a great question. So it kind of takes me back to, it's going to be 3 years that I've been with Key next month. And it started during the pandemic. So I was working at a competitor bank at the time, and my clients needed help with PPP, and we just were not able to provide all the resources that Key did. So my clients would say to me, hey, Elona, we love you. However, we're going to go to KeyBank down the street. They're really supporting us through this process. So this is when I kind of asked myself, where is KeyBank? What is KeyBank all about? So I was able to kind of do my own research about Key, and I met with a few of their leaders on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. It's probably one of my favorite networking sites that we have. And I was able to hear more about KeyBank's story and their impact that they have within the communities. And it's interesting because the first research I did was, what's Key's mission statement? And it's all about empowering their communities, employees, and teammates thrive. And I think, you can say that, but it's different when they're really just kind of putting their money where their mouths are and just really investing in the community, which I think is really impactful.
So really, you kind of were working at one company with the pandemic and decided, you know what, this doesn't have my values. Let's pivot. What was that like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So 13 and a half years I was at the competitors. And as I was doing my research on Key, and again, I was lucky enough to actually meet some of their leaders and have conversations. So this was ongoing until April of 2021. So we're talking about 8 or 9 months conversations. But what really resonated with me is when I went into the About Us page with KeyBank, the first thing they had was around key corporate responsibility initiatives, and then D&I initiatives, and then something called Neighbors Make a Difference Day, which is one of those things that, you're just like, what is that all about? So we have a day dedicated to our teammates volunteering all across the enterprise. And we actually close down branches so then the teammates can go and volunteer in their not-for-profit of choice, which is, again, how are we impactful in the community? This is our way of doing it. And then the most important part about us page was around career. It said, our biggest asset is you, and find out careers about Key here. And I was sold.
Something spoke to you there.
Yeah.
Tell me why, those specific things were so important to you in this time, after 13 years.
Yeah, so I will give you a little bit of my background. So I moved to the United States when I was 12 and a half years old. And I came from a family of professionals. My mom was one of the very few women during communism that was able to get educated and earn her bachelor's degree in history and geography. She's one of those women that continues to inspire me today. But really instilled the value of what women in business or women in leadership bring to the table. So when I did my research with Key, one of the things that really stood out for me the most was their Key for Women program, which I really was eager to learn more about what that meant and what does that mean for the communities that we're serving. So because my why kind of started with my mom, and it still does with what I do today, it's one of those things that was not a hard decision to make when I had to make the move to come over to Key, for sure.
And since joining KeyBank, you also now have a role with Key for Women as well.
Yes. So I'm lucky enough to actually be co-chair for Key for Women for Connecticut, Massachusetts, and kind of really instill the initiatives that we have on an enterprise level and bring it down to a market level.
And for people who don't know, what does Key for Women do?
Yeah, so Key for Women is just a program that was launched in 2005. So it's actually going to be 20 years next year. I think we're going to have like a really big celebration of this. But what it is just our program that really helps our women entrepreneurs motivate, empower, and advocate around the things that they can help their businesses thrive.
And that's kind of how it all ties back to your story, right?
To my why. Yes, for sure. I always say I have my day job, which I love, but then one of my favorite parts of my job is really kind of bringing in that community together and have networking events that just really gives the ability to women-owned businesses be able to tell their story. There's a 60-second elevator pitch with others in the audience to be able to hear, and then the tools and resources that we have available. I think a lot of times banks, always go through access to capital and different ways on providing financial guidance. We actually get more holistic on providing tools and resources, different researches that were done, and then being able to support something like we did last week for the When Women Lead event as well. So
perfect segue into where I was going to turn next. Last week we had the support again from KeyBank and Key for Women at CBI's When Women Lead conference. We had over 500 people there. Just tell me kind of what that experience was like for you.
I was so surprised with the amount of attendees that were in place. It was just an incredible event. So kudos to you and your team for just doing an incredible job of bringing everyone together. And I think about the whole framework of what the agenda was like from the beginning of the opening comments all the way in the end, and having Rachel's and Cindy's discussion. It was just really impactful. And there was so many things that not only resonated with me, but with my team, and I'm sure many others as well. My favorite segment, I have to say, was probably Rachel's, and I'm not giving her a plug-in.
Yeah.
I didn't always think of it as alliance and relationships, and that's what really helped propel my career in getting out of that zone of thinking about who I am versus human.
But Rachel is our national director of Key for Women. She also runs our community banking for KeyBank. And her discussion with Cindy was very impactful when it came to some of the things that I think continue to kind of be some of the things that we see in our society today, especially with women in leadership role like Cindy is. I think because she has been in a family business, we assume that her journey is way easier than everyone else's. And we were able to kind of hear her story as how she had to earn her seat at the table, even though it was a family business, which was really interesting. And then I think the facing the fears part was one that really stood out around their discussion, for sure.
It's also not being afraid of fear. I don't know if that sounds funny, but I'm not afraid of fear. It's a driver, it's reality, and I fought it before and I'll fight it again.
To hear someone, say that and be in this position, that was very, very cool. And so much networking, to be in a room with all of these other women and, male allies really lifting each other up.
Yeah, no, it was really impactful. Like I said, everyone wanted a repeat of it, probably sooner than a year later, but more to come on it for sure.
Yeah, certainly. So. And in working with Key for Women, what have you been able to see, as some of the challenges that women-owned businesses face, and how they've been able to overcome them? I think, specifically coming out of COVID.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So 2 parts. During COVID, a lot of women, especially in leadership roles, actually pivoted to having their own businesses. And it's interesting how much we saw that, and there's actually data that backs that up as well, where they were able to kind of have like side hustles and whatever their creative minds came up with, they wanted to kind of have something to generate income with. The biggest hurdle, I would say, is just being able to have access to capital and how do you go about and asking. And I think that's just one of those things that as women, probably more than our male counterparts, you don't typically go into a bank and say, hey, I need some advice on I'm starting this new business. This is my vision. This is my business plan. I really need your help to kind of give me that guidance and be able to have the right funding and where to go to be able to do that. This is, I think, where the competitive part of us is that we're just so holistic. So we have what it's called Key for Women Certified Advisors. So every one of most of our branch managers or our branch teammates actually get certified for Key for Women. So they truly understand what Key for Women program is, the resources that we have within that. So they're able to kind of provide them the right financial guidance. And then not only that, and then be able to then support them through networking events, kind of like what we did last week. And I actually had a Key for Women event that took place this week on Tuesday in Westport as well. So it's those things kind of bringing them together and being able to, again, through the impact that we can, especially for small business.
How would you categorize the female business owners that you work with in Connecticut and Massachusetts?
Yeah, so It's interesting because going back to the pandemic just it had its I always say like negatives, but then it had the positive. So I've been lucky enough to partner up with different women entrepreneurs that just have been so successful. So I'll tell you, like Tuesday's event, we actually had Amy Schoenthal, who is an author that just launched her book called The Setback Cycle. And she's an entrepreneur. She actually was working corporate for a very long time and then pivoted during the pandemic and went into entrepreneurship and doing a lot of freelance work, doing some editing for Forbes Women. So just very intellectual, very smart. But then she was able to kind of share her story of some of the setbacks she went through as a woman and in a different role. And then being able to bring that into like, how do I convert it into entrepreneurship and actually be successful in it? So it's interesting how I think, something like that can turn into obviously having your own business and having your own, being independent. But then I met her through another Key for Women event that we had not too long ago, which her niche is actually mompreneurship, which mompreneurship means that your business starts from the moment you drop off your kids to the moment you pick them up. And you have that window of like being able to, who your audience is, be able to adapt and market and strategize. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. You kind of continue building up. And I love hearing their stories because they are so impactful. And even on Tuesday, having Amy come in and just kind of share her story was one that resonated not only with some of our teammates from KeyBank, but most importantly, the other entrepreneurs that were in the room as well. So,
and I think we also need to kind of, talk about, I guess, in terms of this journey. Right now you lead a team. You've got 50 plus branches between the two states. What are some of the things that you do to kind of help you as a leader?
Yeah, so sometimes I need to give myself my own advice. I think it's a combination of many things. I think it's prioritizing your day. I always say if it's not on the schedule or my calendar, it does not exist. So there are certain things that are, take priority over others. I started this by saying I'm a mom of 2 boys. That is my first priority. And, no matter where I'm in, even including this, right? Like that phone is going to go off. I will have to pick it up because obviously they're just so important to me. But then when we think about my impact and what I do is I make sure that wherever I'm carving my time, it's going to be to help and support my teams, no matter, between the 2 states, and then meet clients along the way. It's my favorite part. I think, I've heard one that started from like baking literally in their kitchen to then now having this network level macaroons that are across the entire, they are the best macaroons out of New York City, by the way. But like, it's just so great to hear you went from yourself to like having 50 employees under you. Like then we were able to kind of, support and help them grow in that. That's what makes me fuel my fire.
Yeah, so the women entrepreneurs that you work with every day, and I'm sure, some of the male-owned businesses as well, kind of keep you going.
1,000%. It's exciting to kind of see their own growth, right? Like year over year as some of the things that they're doing or pivoting. One of the things I always see, especially for women entrepreneurs, is that they love their business, whatever it is that their niche that they're doing. And they're like, well, I'm just going to focus on it. I'm going to take my own money for it. I'm going to do this. And I'm just, this is where, the banker in me comes out. And it's just, you always need to pay yourself first. You always want to make sure that no matter what, what place you are in your business, it starts with paying you before you start instilling and injecting extra funding into your business. So this is where like guidance and advice is important. So no matter where you are, making sure that you're going to a banker that truly understands your business, it's critical.
What do you think is one of the biggest challenges that people face? I know you said kind of coming in, asking for help, but kind of once they get started, post-pandemic, what have you seen as some of the larger challenges for small business owners?
I think it's just that. I think it's being able to pivot quickly. Some that, were able to do that, did it well. And I think this is why we're seeing them continue to grow and show growth throughout their businesses. And others were just very status quo and did not kind of engage in that digital engagement or being able to set up some online or remote, right? Because that's how everybody else was able to. And I think that's where we saw the changes between the two. But I think it also then helped improve in some ways and launch new entrepreneurship for some women-owned businesses, especially that probably prior to the pandemic, they would have still had that corporate 9 to 5 job that they were commute to and from, some of those places. But I would definitely think it's the pivoting and being agile enough to be able to do that. And I don't think everybody was there.
Has that digital aspect, do you think that's been the biggest kind of area where people are investing right now in terms of small businesses that are looking to grow?
Yeah, digital engagement is definitely one of the reasons where we're seeing growth, and especially leveraging things like payments, right? I think that a lot of banks now are getting very creative on how it is that they can help small business owners, especially with different platforms. Merchant services is one that always comes to mind because before, I think when people think of merchant, they always think swipe or scan or whatever it is. But now there's actually digital platforms that there are built out for your business based on the business needs. But again, not everyone knows that. And those are the questions that you'd have to kind of go in the bank and ask and be able for them to kind of guide you and help you position it. And marketing is costly, right? So that's the other part is everything that you do has some type of significant cost associated with it. So you want to make sure that your debits and credits are matching, and then having the right resources to be able to then guide you with things like merchant, it's going to be critical.
Any other areas where you kind of foresee a lot of investment coming down the pipeline, or areas people are going to have to adapt?
So definitely one of the ones that I would say it's also important to mention is fraud. I mean, we're just continuing to see increase in fraud, and fraudsters are just getting more creative on how it is that they can unfortunately get into someone's business and be able to start debiting or whatever it is. And I think it's always different for consumer and business, because for consumer, there's other parameters that you have in place. For business, it just impacts your business. So the moment that happens, there's a lot of things that go into it. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to have, some measures, cybersecurity measures in place, and leveraging your banks to be able to then give you the right parameters, so you don't have to, your business is not going to be impacted by it. But fraud is definitely something that we continue to educate our clients on.
What's next for KeyBank and Key for Women?
Yes, so KeyBank will continue investing into relationship benefits for our relationship clients. So what that means is that you'll be receiving additional rates on deposits, discounts on lending, and most importantly, we have one of the best credit cards, actually 2% cash back. So we'll continue investing in that, and then we're definitely building up our wealth aspect of our business, which is we just launched Key Private Client. And then for Key for Women, we'll continue building up our platform for Key for Women when it comes to initiatives, networking, tools and resources that are out there, not only through our site, but most importantly in-house as well, especially in the Connecticut, Massachusetts market. I love the work that we've done. This is why we sponsored and partnered up with When Women Lead event, because I think it's really important to continue building that up. I think, as years go by, we're going to continue to have different things that'll come up within our environment. So having platforms like Key for Women that we're able to help elevate women-owned businesses is going to be critical. So we just have to be more strategic on who it is that we're partnering up with, that it's going to be able to tell our story about how Key for Women has helped their communities. And I think that doing something like we're doing today, it's also as important as well. So
great. Well, now, I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but, we like to close out with our guests kind of leadership lessons that they've learned specifically in the last couple of years. Or, it could be something that you heard at the conference that you also, have done in your career. Any advice?
Yeah, I think what we learned from the pandemic especially is the ability to be agile in what we do. And I think as leaders, that it's probably one of those things that we really need to have a good understanding of, having agility and being able to adapt to things. Banking or any industry is one of those, in the environment that we're in today, changes. So being a change agent is critical as a leader, and then having the right mentors is critical. So I'm one that I'm lucky enough to have incredible mentors in my journey, especially coming to Key, that are women leaders within Key as well, that have just given me tremendous amount of support and guidance, and just kind of really helped me get to where I am today in their own ways. But then our male allies, and I love the fact that Key just truly does value women in leadership by having the male allies, even in senior leaders role, again, to kind of continue building that support. So I think for me, it's just continuing to be a mentor to others that can be able to lead that next generation of leaders. But then I can't shy away from sponsors. I think that's really important as well. We always talk about mentorship and the importance of it, but I also think is as important knowing that you have people that are really kind of sharing about you and talking about you when you're not there. And that could be during talent discussions, and we talk a lot about career growth and all these other things that we see out there, but having the right sponsors be able to tell your story when you're not there, I think it's very, very important and powerful as well. So.
Great. So really, taking the mentors who you can go to for questions, who you can look up to and learn from, but the sponsors being the people that will suggest you for, being part of a new project or for a higher level position on the team.
Yeah. Absolutely, it's like I said, one of those things that's really important, and it just it instills within you. But I think it's also what the organization spends their time on as well, and that's why I'm lucky enough to work for one that does both and does both well.
Does KeyBank have any set programs in place to help with mentors, or is it really just part of the culture?
So it's definitely part of the culture, which is great. And this is my way of, before even coming to Key and having those connect sessions that I did with different leaders, kind of being able to tell the story about Key. But we actually have a program within Key as well that it's more standard, where you can partner up with a mentor depending on what you want to do. It's interesting because I think sometimes being in banking, you want to kind of be in like retail. What's great about Key is that you can go into retail, to corporate, to real estate, to commercial, to middle market, to business banking or private banking. The sky's the limit as to what you want to do. It's going to be entirely up to you as to what you want your journey to start with, and then where do you want the end game to be.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for being a guest on the BizCast this week. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to this week's BizCast. You can listen, like, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review and let us know if you have ideas for a future podcast. And for a full list of episodes, head on over to CBIA.com.